credentials weren't necessarily the criteria. I mean, Bob's adopted, Bob's a renegade. Who am I to say what the criteria is? But they have to decide who will be helpful, who can take it. I mean, let's face it, there are philosophical, theological ramifications to all of this. And they don't just let it wasn't a contest of who has the greatest credentials, that's who gets in this program. And this offends some people. Certainly if they would have wanted great scientists, well, they would have chosen me. So therefore, I don't believe this is going on. But the criteria was, when you say, John, was never who had the greatest credentials.
Yeah, it was who they could probably discredit the easiest if he ever said anything about it.
And the fact that Bob had a chance meeting with Edward Teller, and that just a word from the late Dr. Edward Teller probably meant a lot. I mean, who knows how all of that happened, but Bob did. We still don't know the totality other than what Bob told us of what he did down at the Mason Physics Facility down at Los Alamos. I mean, he did have a background. People have told, John, you have other CIA guys have told you that they love to take adopted people and orphans and people that they can, get rid of and get rid of their personal information and have no family looking for them. Right?
Just so they can shoot them and nobody will say, hey, what happened to my dad and stuff like that.
And the idea of that they would take somebody with gaps in their background, John, and you mentioned it, and maybe he was one of the most qualified guys in the country. If you are looking for someone with scientific and technical capabilities and expertise, but who could just be easily destroyed if the need arose.
Right. He told us he had 3 interviews. After he called Dr. Teller, he was called in the first interview, they were all, I guess, technical interviews. And he told us after he did those interviews, each one, he said, I aced it. And he told us exactly what they asked and what his answers were, and they were of a highly technical nature. The only interesting thing was on the second interview, the first question was, now tell us about John Lear and what your relationship is with John Lear. And he says, I know John Lear, but I think he sticks his nose in places where it doesn't belong. And Bob said what he didn't tell him is he also likes to stick his nose into places it doesn't belong.
Here's a funny thing. Remember I told you that Bob loves to appease women. And while he was, John, you aren't going to like me saying this, when he was still trying to do whatever he could to impress his wife to keep her and attract her back, here's an entry here that they took a flight when John was ferrying an L-1011. So Bob's wife was taking flying lessons. Now she doesn't even have a private pilot's license. John lets her fly an L-1011 in the pilot's chair. And what did you give her? 20 or 30 minutes of flight time, John, in that L-1011?
Hello, no comment.
So there's another attempt at trying to get his woman back. Someone named John let him fly an L-1011. Maybe it wasn't John Lear.
Yeah, there's plenty of guys named John in this world.
You've both have heard the criticism that maybe this was a setup, that they had got Bob for this job just precisely so they could do exactly that. They figured he's kind of a rebel and a troublemaker, and there's no way he's going to be able to keep this secret. We'll tell him some stuff. He'll go ahead and spill the beans, and we'll all have a good laugh about it. What do you think about that? Starting with you, John.
Certainly plausible. I've always thought that, I thought possibly that they were trying to get the information out, and they said, Lear's interested in this, let's work this out so, he can get the information out. And I've always told Bob, we tried our best, but we didn't do a very good job.
But when you extrapolate that out, then there must have been some people who wanted to get it out and some who didn't, right? I think there was a conflict there, because if they all wanted to, if it was a consensus that they wanted to get it out, it could have been accomplished. You know what I mean? They certainly tried to prevent it after the fact.
Well, the effect was they put it out and they drew it back. I mean, you allowed Bob to spill those beans, allowed us to tell the stories, and then in the eyes of a lot of people, discredited him entirely.
But they told him when he was there, he asked them, how do you keep this secret? And they said it's the easiest thing in the world to keep secret, that as long as you don't prove anything one way or the other, as long as you keep people on the fence and, ridicule those who believe or who think they've seen proof, ridicule them and just dismiss the rest. It's an easy thing to keep secret because everybody wants to say, oh, there's no life anywhere else that we've discovered. Why would we have the SETI project? Why, But and as a counterpoint, George, look at all the information you've amassed from civilian pilots, military pilots. I mean, confirmed with ground radar, air radar, an actual sighting by pilots. It's something moving thousands of miles an hour past an airliner. And a long time ago, before it could possibly be any terrestrial aircraft, in the 50s, a crew of Air Force men. And yet everybody goes, well, I wonder what that was. They don't, even though it couldn't possibly have been a craft from Earth piloted by human beings, they still don't conclude that must be something or someone from somewhere else. So,
or our government saying, well, gosh, this can't be a threat to national security, so we're not going to worry about it. I mean, craft that can outfly anything you've got, that demonstrate mastery over things like nuclear missiles and can even enter nuclear codes on your most powerful weapon systems. I mean, if that is not national security stuff, I don't know what is.
Right. And there is no one there, from the biggest skeptic. I mean, if everyone was intelligent and honest, people who dismiss the possibility that there's life elsewhere and that life has been here, that it is here or that it has been here, in antiquity, if they actually read and examined the evidence, they could do nothing but conclude that there is life somewhere else and that life has visited the Earth. But it's easier to not examine it and just say, well, why don't they land on the White House lawn? And since they haven't, I don't believe it.
What about the idea that they allowed this story to be told, used Bob to tell it, used the rest of us to tell it, so that they could distract attention from something else, maybe something else that was a legitimate earthly made technology out there? What do you think about that, John?
Very plausible. Yeah, they had a lot of things to cover up. I think they kind of mastered the cover-up there with the F-117 because the F-19 was a secret. It still is a secret. We haven't heard of any brand new, really super sophisticated airplanes except the F-22, and that's old technology. And certainly, after 20, 25 years, they have stuff that's really, really out of this world as far as technology.
And to that end, whatever that end was, they'd have alien beings vivisection. I'm not saying I'm naive, and I know what great lengths they could go to program someone, but I always say, to what end? I mean, they go, is that the best thing they could come up with? We're afraid that someone's going to see our new spy plane, so I'll tell you what, let's try and make everyone think that, flying saucers and there's light. That's a pretty touchy subject. I mean, it touches theology and philosophy. That there must be a better way, is what I'm thinking.
Well, my thought is, if that really was the plan, that they had an idea that let's tell this crazy UFO story, then destroy the credibility of the story, and we'll distract attention away from whatever is flying around out there, whatever secret projects we've got going at this very, very valuable base. That policy was a miserable failure and backfired on them, because to this day, you've still got people going out there with binoculars and telescopes to see whatever it is that's flying around in the sky. You've had tens of thousands of people who've made the trek out into the desert. You've had every major news organization in the world gone out there to look around. You've had congressional investigators and all kinds of media attention. If they didn't want attention for something that was going on out there, somebody really screwed up.
Not only there, but everywhere. There's nowhere in the world that people aren't looking, as a reaction to that, probably. And so you just because you can't get away with it there, you probably can't get away with it anywhere that there are human beings.
The idea that some people have raised that Bob was part of this thing, that he was a disinformation agent working with this government. John, how would you respond to that?
That he was a different disinformation agent?
That he was working with them to tell this story and stir the pot.
It's certainly plausible. I don't believe it, but, he could have been.
I've heard that before. And first of all, I've even heard Bob say, had they asked me to do that, I probably would have participated. He doesn't deny that he would be a guy that would do that if they asked him. However, he is the worst guy in the world. Bob can't, his memory, he can't keep, he treats most subjects with such disdain. He wouldn't waste his time